You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Well, hello there. Welcome to episode 26. As promised last week, this episode will be a follow-up to the topic of change, where I'm going to discuss the changes we didn't choose, the things that we see as happening to us, the things we didn't ask for, the things we tend to resist. Before I begin with this very important subject, I have a confession. I am currently in the process of rebuilding my own momentum around daily habits because I took a few days off. Not from every single one of them, but quite a few of them. What? Yes, I did. I sure did. And I didn't plan this time off. It just sort of happened, which is an absolute BS thought. But I allowed that thought to be there, just happening. I went with it. Or perhaps it's more appropriate to say that I went without it. Because one of the things that I stopped doing over that period of 5 days, one of the habits that I chose to ignore was my daily thought downloads. That's essentially exploring your thoughts, doing a brain dump on paper of everything in your head. I usually spend no more than 10 to 15 minutes on this activity, yet it is so very essential because you can't step into the role of watcher of your own damn mind if you don't take the time to do the work. And I have to say I missed it. I really did. Not enough to pick it right back up the next day, obviously, but definitely enough that I felt off until I got back into it, which was this morning. This is really one of the most important daily habits that we can get ourselves into. I stress it with my clients and they all resist it, every single one of them, because that's simply what we do as humans. We resist doing the things that are new and different and uncomfortable at first. We resist doing the things that take work and especially focusing inward. A lot of times we are afraid of what we might find there. It's easier not to know. Ignorance is bliss. Now, it doesn't make it any easier when your coach points it out to you. Let's be clear. It's very helpful and very useful information to have, the awareness that all of your emotions are created from your very own thoughts. But it's so much easier to blame all the other people in your life and the circumstances that are happening around you, isn't it? Again, a rhetorical question. Of course it's easier to point to the circumstances of our lives as the reason we don't get shit done, the reason we don't move forward, the reason we stay stuck in our past, reliving our traumas, and every little thing that went wrong along the way. That's what brains do. That's how they work. That's why it's so very crucial to pay attention every single day. And even if or when you skip the process of doing a thought download, simply noticing the lies that come up and present themselves as valid and rational thoughts will help you to change and shift your perspective. But you do have to notice. You cannot ignore because your thoughts don't go away. As long as you are alive, you will have thoughts. There's no escape. You might as well be friends with them, really get to know them. So I told my coach on Monday that I felt like a total fraud having just told my podcast listeners all of the things that they needed to do to make the changes that they want to make. And here I am taking a break. It was hilarious, though, because I had coached her the previous week on the type of change I'm going to talk about today. And she had her own epiphany then, and that was, I am the leader of the resistance. That is what my coach said last week when I was coaching her on this. We had a good laugh about it then. And we had another good laugh about it on Monday when she pointed out to me that I'm also being a leader of the resistance. I'm simply resisting the changes that I want, whereas she was resisting the changes that are happening anyway. And let's be clear, both viewpoints are common. Both are completely understandable. Both can be overcome. You just have to want it. And that, my friends, is my plug for the power of coaching and thought work. Really think of it as a lifestyle change. If you want to be physically healthier and lose weight, not a quick fix. The same is true for your mind. I'm sharing this so that you understand the work is never done. Yes, I know full well how to do the work, how important that it is, and I can still find myself spinning around with the same basic instincts to seek pleasure, avoid pain, save energy, because I am a human living the human experience. Also, when I refer to the power of coaching, I'm also advocating that coaches are coached by others. I want you to know that I am absolutely committed to that personally. A coach does help you to see the things about yourself that you can't always see. So when you're out there shopping for a coach to partner with on your journey, make sure that you ask if she or he is also working with a coach. I think that's super important and telling about our own commitment to this work. It's not just about plugging it for everyone else around you. Oh, I'm the enlightened one, the one that will show you the way, follow me. No, I'm a fallible human who also does the work. I also follow, and sometimes I fall. And when I do, I get right back up and get back into the routines that I know will pay off. Okay. Let's dig into the change we didn't ask for, because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where many of us lose our shit. It has certainly been an interesting year for observing humanity while we all wrestle with the circumstances around us. Seriously, fascinating. I mentioned in the last episode that I am a certified change leader, and prior to my experience of being trained as a life coach, that was the most riveting and rigorous training that I've been through. Beyond some college courses, that was really my first formal introduction into human behaviors. And of course, it was around changes in the workplace, organizational change, enterprise change, changes of technology, processes, etc., how people respond and adapt. I learned that I had actually been performing a lot of the change management best practices already, just through my own instinct. I've always had this ability to step outside of what I see and to try to see things as others might see them. One of my favorite things to do in my past life of working in technology was to create the instructional and procedural documentation around the system changes that our department was responsible for implementing from the end user perspective, from the person who would be sitting down at his or her computer to start their workday for the first time with the new application? What would their experience look like? What questions would they have? How many would I be able to answer ahead of time through instruction and clear communications? I really geeked out on that part of my job, you all. It was my favorite thing. And in those days, I was always dealing with change that no one asked for. Always. Everyone was perfectly fine with the way that the email system worked before. They didn't ask for a conversion to a new program. They certainly didn't ask to start with a clean slate and lose all of their history unless they performed a few steps prior to the conversion to manually download stuff onto a disk. Yeah, this was a long time ago, boys and girls. We used floppy disks and CDs back in the day. Technology itself and how it has permeated our daily lives is actually fascinating because in the grand scheme of things, the evolution and change has been quite rapid. And mostly humans have rolled with it. Now, mind you, not without complaining, not without kicking and screaming at times, but for the most part, I have personally witnessed an acceptance in the area of technology at work, needing to change with increasing frequency. People finally settle into it and understand it just before it changes again. They then come to realize that it's a part of working life. If they're going to use a computer at work, things are quite simply going to change. If you do work or have worked in an office environment of any kind over the past decade or so, maybe even longer, I want you to pause for just a moment and reflect back on what part of your job and the systems you have used have remained exactly the same as they were 10 years ago. Are you with me? What did everything look like 10 years ago and 5 years ago? Now, ask yourself how many of those changes you decided were in your best interest. How many of those changes did you initiate as part of a New Year's resolution, for example? Exactly. Technology changes have become an acceptable part of life. Each time our department made a system upgrade or converted to a new platform, the entire process became easier. We got better at making it happen. Even though each one was different than the one before, each time was different, we had lessons learned and experiences to draw on to try to make the next one smoother. And each time our coworkers, the end users, had a positive experience with the overall adjustment, it reinforced their trust in us that everything was going to be okay. And if it wasn't, we would be on it while they worked offline or with alternate procedures. The pain would be temporary, fleeting, nothing to get all twisted over. It was simply a process that we all had to go through together. Now, let's apply this to something other than workplace technology because that's kind of a softball. Let's talk about something more difficult happening out there in the world today, something that impacts a lot of us. Yes, I'm going to touch on the COVID-19 response here because it's necessary. You can roll your eyes all you want, and you can stop listening if you don't want to hear anymore, but I encourage you to adopt a new perspective for just a few moments. Because this won't be about me telling you what to do or what's right or wrong about anything that's happening as a result of this global pandemic we are currently experiencing. Instead, I want you to simply consider what has changed in your world since March. What changes have been thrust upon you and your family over the past 6 months, and what has your response been? Let's see if I can rattle a few things off from my own observation. Masks required in public. Maybe not a national mandate, but for most of us living in cities, this is the case. Expansion of self-checkout. Oh my God, some of you go crazy over this, saying, you're not paying me to work here if you have to do your own checkout at the grocery store. Cracks me up. I love self-checkouts, always have, in and out. Easy breezy. And they're expanding. I now do this at our library. There is no longer a human at the desk. And while I'm a little sad about that part, more and more contact points are becoming touchless and self-service. Online learning. Many schools are still remote or a hybrid of in-person and remote, so our children are making some major adjustments. And by the way, I will just add again that mine is loving every minute of it. He gets to sleep in a bit and stay barefoot all day. He's doing fantastic with online learning, and he's also a sixth grader. I get it. If you were in first grade, I'm sure I'd be having an entirely different experience right now. No concerts, fairs, festivals, sporting events, in-person conferences. Most public gatherings are off limits right now. Working from home, Zoom meetings, travel restrictions. Many of us have done staycations this year or have only taken road trips when we would have normally been booking flights. Movie theaters are closed, bars and clubs are closed, or at least seriously restricted. Of course, I could go on for days with this list, but you get the idea. You know where we are, where you are, where all of the changes have occurred over the past several months. And it's all a lot to take in at once. I get it. I really do. To make it extra special, the reason behind all of these changes, as communicated, is so that we can stay alive. I'm not saying this to bring your vibe down. You know where we are. What I am saying is that I want you to inspect the world around you and be able to identify what are the circumstances beyond your control and what are your thoughts about them, because those are two separate things. I want you to be able to differentiate between the two, because only one of these things shapes your experience of this life. Spoiler alert, it's not the circumstances. Your experience in this life starts with your thoughts. All emotions that you have about anything going on around you, what someone says to you, whether or not you are able to go to the same places that you were able to go last year, or whether you have to learn a new computer application to do your job as effectively as you did last week. Those emotions are created by your thoughts. Period. Full stop. I'm going to keep returning to this theme until you fully understand it, because when you do, it is life-changing. We're talking about change after all. There is a concept, change your mind, change your life. I'm not even sure who to attribute that one to. It's been floating around for so long. I know there's a book by that title, but, and this is going to be shocking, I know, it's one that I haven't read. No book excerpts today, just the concept. Your life experience is created by your mind. Your life experience is created by your thoughts, not anything happening externally in this world, but your thoughts about everything that's happening externally in this world. Let's take that short list of examples that I just rattled off and break it down one by one. As a refresher, those examples were masks in public, self-checkout, online learning, no concerts, fairs, festivals, or sporting events, working from home, travel restrictions, movie theaters, bars, and clubs are closed. Every one of these things is a circumstance. How do we know this? Not one of these things is within your ability to control. Also, different people are going to have different thoughts about the things on this list. Those different thoughts are going to create completely different emotions and therefore a whole range of experiences. For example, some of you listening might think of at least those first three items, masks in public, self-checkout, online learning, as being forced upon you. They, air quotes around the collective they out there in the world, and in many cases the government, they are forcing me or trying to force me to wear masks, to use self-checkout, or to have my kids attend school at home and online. When you think of change as being forced on you, the instinct is typically to resist, and you do that from a place of anger or defiance. That's the emotion that you feel when you think the thought, these are forced changes to the way I've grown accustomed to living my life. That's thought. We know these examples are circumstances because not everyone will agree to that thought. Some others may think, I'm okay with doing whatever needs to be done to keep me and my family safe. And if that means more self-checkout kiosks, wearing a mask in public, or supporting online learning for an interim period of time, then so be it. It's nothing but a thing. Two completely opposite ends of the spectrum, and every flavor in between. Some people are mad as hell because their concerts, festivals, and sporting events have been canceled. Others are shrugging it off and maybe even feeling somewhat appreciative that those extra expenses for entertainment aren't presenting themselves right now. The owners of those venues and the local economies that enjoy a boost with event attendance are certainly reevaluating things. Everyone is having a different experience. None of this was planned. We didn't ask for any of it. And the circumstances themselves remain unchanged. Now, this is where we have a choice. We can stay pissed off about things. We can moan and groan and resist. Or we can accept what is and change our thoughts about it. What approach do you think would make you feel more powerful? You can certainly choose whatever thoughts you want to think about anything that happens in the external world. Just know that those thoughts are really the only things that are within your control. When changes occur in the external world, your choice is to change yourself internally, to find some sense of harmony and balance with it all, or not. It all starts with awareness. That's the first component of the change management model that I started out with, that I mentioned in the beginning of this episode. You have to be aware of what it is, what's happening, the need for it to happen. That does not mean that you agree with it, but you are aware of it. What do you need to be aware of? What is it? The change is happening externally or internally? Well, both. Of course, it helps to recognize that things happening outside of you, outside of your control, are happening, whether you fucking like it or not. It is what it is. It just is. It's all neutral. And it's different. It's different than how you envisioned it should be. It's different than the way it's always been, or at least the way it's been for the past few years. And maybe it feels like too much at once, but again, that's a thought. Let me assure you that the same emotions and responses that I'm seeing today were present when we were implementing new software or planning an office move. Just because it's on a much larger scale and far more than 500 people are impacted doesn't mean that those changes were any easier to adjust to. They still required adjustments within. Coming to that internal realization, you are going to have to change in order to meet up and reconcile with what is happening out there in the world. To have awareness that even though you didn't ask for it, and you're not even close to being on board with it, it's happening anyway, with or without your consent or your buy-in. So you can push back and you can resist it all with every fiber of your being, and you can be a complete asshole to everyone around you, whether or not they are responsible for your feelings. Another spoiler alert, they are not. Sure, you can do that, but here's what I know. That will deplete your energy and eventually wear down your resolve much faster than simply taking a deep breath and finding that awareness within yourself of what you can, in fact, control. You can control your reaction. You can control your response. You can release your resistance. You can do all of that by changing your thoughts about what's changing within the world around you. Most of us think of change as something that happens to us, not for us. It's simply a natural human response, nothing to be ashamed of or to judge yourself over. Our initial reaction is to fight it. It's fight or flight. We don't want it. We didn't ask for it. But what if we could settle into the knowledge that it's all going to happen anyway, that it was always going to happen this way, that most of your plans were going to need to be adjusted or even abandoned regardless of how you thought it was going to be, and that it's all still going to be okay. What if that were true? Could that be true? Is that possible? Of course it is. All you have to do is decide that it is. That, my friend, is how this life works. I had such amazing sessions with my clients today. I always do, because I have the most amazing clients. So of course our time together is perfection. But I want to share with you some of the thoughts that came through just a few hours ago because it fits so well with this topic. It's like another piece to the puzzle connecting just right. As I had the outline for this episode well underway, when this conversation went where it did, it was almost like divine intervention. Of course it was. My client was talking about her journey in coming to the realizations over time that she does, in fact, create her own reality and her own experience. She said, that should be more comforting than it is. Then she went on to describe the process of her own internal change as being almost like layers, where layer 1 generates a feeling of panic. And the thought is, oh no, this is all out of my control. And it's like being sandwiched between scratchy sheets that you just want to scramble out of. And she said, it's almost overwhelming to think that people are going to do what they do and think what they think, and things are going to happen like they're going to happen, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's all out of my control. Then, as she moves through the process, she can start to see the second layer, which is one of relief. Relief and release that comes with it, both in this layer, this other layer. The thought that generates that relief, wow, this is all out of my control. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it. And it feels like a warm, weighted blanket, comfortable, welcoming, safe, a place you want to stay. And of course, a lot of the time she feels like she's in the middle, more self-assured than the very first conversation that we had, yet still a work in progress. Well, isn't that just about everything right there? Same, girl. Same. You see, sometimes the thoughts don't even need to change. Just the tone and the perspective can create a total mind shift within. How cool is that? And as Rumi says, life's picture is constantly undergoing change. The spirit beholds a new world every moment. Indeed. Of course, there are a million inspirational quotes about change for this very reason. The world is in a constant state of change, and it always has been. All of the modern conveniences we tend to take for granted were inconceivable centuries ago and even decades ago. Change itself is the only constant, life's picture ever changing. But how you see it, the spirit in which you approach this life, how you show up, that is how you will live your experience. That choice is always available to you. This podcast itself is a reflection of what it's like to work with me. It is always an honor to serve, and most certainly to witness the absolute magic that happens when another person finds awareness and understanding of her power. That is absolutely everything, and I'm so grateful to be able to share it with you. Connect with me through my website at sunnythelifecoach.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please take just a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That will help others find it too. Light up, shine on.